Thank you. First of all, let me thank the department and the organizers for giving me this opportunity. I'm very happy to be here, especially when I see my teachers, Dr. Warrior and Dr. Bhavsar is there, and also Dr. Kailas is present. And today, actually, what I'm talking about is not the technology part of science, not projecting science as a tool for generating technology. I would like to talk about science or more than actually our faith in science, whether we really trust it from that angle. For example, if you take the those who started the whole affair, like starting from Galileo, or if you take Newton, or Raman, Saha, or Einstein, they were probably not doing science just to generate technology. It was just for the sake of pure knowledge. And that's how the human race has reached the present level. And today, sometimes I get a feeling, okay, we are just seeing science as just as a tool for generating technology and leaving out the essence. So I'll just talk about those things, and let me just share the slides. Sir, can you see that?
Yes, I can see.
We can see.
Some
So
screen.
what you see is actually a website where I have hosted the slides and all the reference material, whatever I have used. And now I'll move on to the slides and put it in the presentation mode. Now it is full screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll just see, mostly my intention would be to say something and also give the reference material so that so are interested in such topics, they can read further. So mostly I have used 5 or 6 books to gather the ideas, and one of them, the most important one, the book titled Ideas and Opinions by Albert Einstein, that is, and a PDF copy is available on the web, so that you can read. And there he talks about not only science, many other issues like social issues and many things. And so let us say, we will talk about, first we will give a very brief definition, what is science, and the impact of science, not the present impact, whatever overall impact so far, where it has taken us. And then we will just consider, it's basically a lot of arguments against science, and there are also a lot of people who have a tendency to reject science in many ways. And then if you consider, say, like our overall social life, if you watch it through the lens of science, how it looks like. And most of this, like the impact of science on our lives, I have taken the data from this website. And you can get all kinds of data from here, and some of them are this WHO and other organizations. So if you define science, like Einstein gives some definition like this, like arts and science you see as a kind of escape from our personal hope, life. You can say you cease to worry about our personal hopes and wishes and try to admire the universe or the working of this nature. So then you enter the realm of art and science. And if it is done using the language of logic and probably mathematics, you are in science. If intuition is the key, and then you are in the region of art. So this is a kind of definition which he gives. And you can say simply, okay, it's just science is nothing but say searching for the truth behind whatever we observe, and it's an offshoot of the natural curiosity with which we are born. But it has a method, and that is what is more important. It goes like you just observe something and think of some questions, and you start with some hypothesis. And this hypothesis will give you some predictions that can be tested. And then you experimentally see the results of whatever your hypothesis predicts. If it doesn't tally, you keep on modifying that. Okay, if it tallies, then you reach some theories and again try to refine that. So that's how we develop the theories. I mean, the keyword is all the theories, they have to match with the observations. That means it is objective. I mean, finally, the universe, the world around us, the physical universe has to tell what your theory is right or wrong. The experiment is the. So that means even if what you observe or your inferences goes against your personal opinion, you have to accept it. And ultimately, the one objective is there is a diverse phenomena, and you have to explain them based on minimal number of assumptions. That means unification of all the theories. And it also, we can say it's a body of knowledge, all the science and technology together. And another thing is when we talk about these things, most of the words which we use in our daily life doesn't carry much meaning in this, I mean, in the field of science. For example, we take the Rutherford atom and we teach that the electron is going around this because this is a textbook picture. It is good for high schools. But really, those who practice in this field, they don't take literally this picture. For them, what matters is they have a mathematical model. There is a nucleus, and around that there is an electron cloud. And that model tells them something like this, P, all these orbitals and everything. And according to this, you may have a crystal structure like this. And this structure, this suppose it's a graphite structure, this is validated by an experiment. Like you take a, say, a scanning tunnel microscope image and you see this pattern and you match these two, and that gives you a sort of confidence, okay, what we are talking about, this is theory. So this is the way in which most of the things progress. And by the way, this is a homemade STM which we used. And now I just talk about the impact of science on our lives. And that's, I mean, the overall impact. Like if you see, if you take in the Middle Ages, maybe 400 years back, the world was dominated by dogma, faith, or revelations, like basically the loyalty to tribe and basically blind beliefs. And the reason refined by science and the ideas like humanism and the idea of progress replaced them. And our lives have changed. And we will see whether it is good or bad, there is a debate. But some parameters to measure, I mean, that you can measure the changes which science made is like average lifespan, child mortality, all those things. You see, everyone wants to live comfortably, whatever you may say. So we will see some. So I have taken some data and show you, like, it's again from this site. The average lifetime has increased from below 30 years to something like now 80 years or above 80 years in some areas. So it doesn't mean that before, say, 1900, everybody was dying at the age of 30. This number comes because of child mortality. So if you say in 18th century Europe, even this is true even among the kings and or very highly well-off people, nearly half of the children died before the age of 50. And if you see even today, like if you see the graphs 2019 here, even somehow Sri Lanka has a better performance than the world average, and even ours, like India and Bangladesh. So this is the available data. And worse than this, you can see the maternal mortality ratio. So out of, say, 100,000 live births, and the mortality rate was, say, something like more than 500, and it has come down. Again, you can see there is, and if you want to see, you go to this site and you can get the data for almost all the countries. It's available. I just chosen few of them, like India and our neighboring countries and some Western nations. So this is just samples. And why do I put this data? Because people started trusting science and all these things have improved, but sometimes there is a tendency to go back. So this is the recent news. Because there are certain propaganda against scientific ideas and whatever odd ideas, and finally some people fall prey to that. And that is a dangerous tendency, especially in the areas of like vaccination and all. And this is another impact you can say about these diseases. Smallpox killed something like 300 million people in 20th century, but it's all before 1975. And around 1975, it has been eradicated. So this is all credit goes to science. And apart from all these things, probably what is most important is not only our world view also got changed. This was our old world view, the ancient cosmology. You can see Earth and the different heavens and, but now we have a view here. You stand here floating in space and stars all around, right? And actually this has given us a kind of, it has made humans more humble, like in this time and space scale. It has told, okay, humans are just insignificant in this universe. You are that importance and you are sitting in the center of the universe. All these things have been eliminated. Now, again, often you find there are certain charges against science. One is science and technology has spoiled our natural way of life. This comes from many corners. And says again, it has spoiled the environment. And there is another argument. It says, okay, they agree, okay, science can provide material comforts, but it lacks spirituality. And this has most of the time come from people who sell spirituality. And also another thing, it says the armed conflicts and all those things have become more deadly. And sometimes it is projected science is creating it. And of course, it's contradicting the old knowledge also. So let us take these charges and examine them one by one. So first, about this, like we are tampering with nature, and why we did that actually. Is the science to blame or something else? Like somehow we ended up using fertilizer, pesticides, and now recently genetically modified crops. And you can see GM crops is a big debate now about that. But if you look back, humans were like other animals until they started handling fire. And somewhere around 10,000, say around in this 10,000 BC, the Neolithic Revolution started. Actually, people from this hunter-gatherer life, they started agriculture, farming. And this farming can be taken, it is the first attack on the environment. And if you want more data, it's all here, all this. I'll just show a few slides from this site. So this is actually the population growth. During this agricultural revolution, when it started, you can say it's starting something like 2 million, finally we reached 10 million. And then it has been a constant, a big growth. Say by 3000 BC is 50 million. And by 1825 it is 1 billion. And then what you see, the food production increased, but it was not keeping up with the population increase. And this resulted in poverty. And in 75 we reached 4 billion. So what is there to be done under this condition? Actually, the Green Revolution has helped a lot. Let us see how it has helped. And now sometimes we say all, use of fertilizers and other things. There is arguments against. So feeding this 4 billion was achieved mainly by the Green Revolution. You can see the wheat yield in different countries, 1950 to 2004. It was increasing. And on the research front, actually, the percentage of plant weight in grain, that has been increased by making shorter varieties of wheat and all. And there are many other techniques, multiple of all those things. But the downside was high fertilizer, pesticide and water use, soil salination, all those things happened. So now, what is the solution to that when you say blaming science? And another thing is, during last century or even before that, these famines was a constant phenomenon. And once like that Malthus theory says the population will be stabilized by famines and wars. And in this connection, I am giving a document, it's a big book actually, a PDF document available, written by a US diplomat. It discusses all the politics between US and India for a long time, even starting from before independence, but it also specifically talks about this PL480 program where we were getting like that ship to mouth program, I mean, getting the wheat aid from US. So that tells about, I mean, without this, probably there would have been more famine. So from this situation, we could come out. And now the question is like, we are here at this number and population may go up, and how science is relevant in that. And this gives you some idea about the land usage. And 70% of this habitable land, you have something like this here. All these numbers, I'm not going to details. But you almost occupied, we have already occupied almost whatever possible areas for agriculture, and the remaining forests are there. So the key point what I'm trying to make is, suppose if you wanted to make the same amount of progress in 1961, we could do it today using 30% of that farmland. Or in other words, if you want to go back to the old ways, we have to increase the existing farmland by 3 times. That is not possible. That means going to the inefficient ways, whatever you may say natural or anything, it is not a possibility. So you have to look forward something, you have to go for more advanced science. See, what is our net requirement? We need energy, right? Sustaining life requires energy. And plants have no problem. They can get it from sun. And all animals are like parasites. We have to either get it from plants or other animals. So maybe one ultimate solution would be to master photosynthesis. Definitely we may do it one day. But until then, the option should be the produce more food using less land and use whatever technology required for that. Because anything other than if you are talking about this, if you need asking for more land, then you are going to spoil the environment really in a worse manner. And most of the time, like especially people above 50 have this tendency to say olden days were better. And it's actually a common human fallacy. It's not based on facts, because human memories about, like if you ask anybody about his younger days, he will definitely say to us, better than today. But it doesn't tally with the reality. Another simple example from that is like you say all these cities came, everything, and there is a big number graph here, like around 130,000 people die in road accidents every year. So that's all created by civilization. But before the advent of roads, you see this data, around 60,000, this is last 20 years data, every year died by snake bites, not by technology. So dangers are there everywhere. So you have to choose which is better. So now comes to other few topic. That means science doesn't have that people need, that is spirituality. Normally spirituality is considered as a monopoly of religions, right? And let us examine like what the conventional religion offer and what the science offers. So the package contains, normally the God, a holy book, and it will have prophets and about some stories about the universe and life, and of course miracles. And there should be some morals and ethics, some lessons. So where does science stand in this regard? Is it totally blank or a zero or something else? Does science offer something? So first of all, if you here, and mostly these things I'm taking from Einstein's book, Ideas and Opinions. So he has given different talks and written essays on this topic. And religion, what always he means that he calls it as a cosmic religion. And the main difference is in his concept that personal God punishing and rewarding you individually is absent. But he always, when he uses the word God, like in the famous sentence, God doesn't play dice, it means actually the harmony of the whole universe, whatever these laws which controlling it. So that harmony is what he means. So probably some links are here, you can explore them. But ultimately, I would say in a plain language, you have two choices. One is to consider a God that plays with billions of galaxies and supernova explosions and complex molecules that give rise to life. or you have another option which something takes your 10 rupees offering and give you some preference over others. So this is a kind of choice probably between these two gods. So now if you take the case of Holy Book, and if you ask everyone, even all religious people say there is only one God, even though they don't agree with each other. So then there has to be, logically, there has to be only one Holy Book. So what could be that? So here, my argument is that it could be this universe. I mean, I don't see anything else that can be considered as a Holy Book. So if that is true, and the only religion reading that book is science, right? At present, only science is reading it. And it looks like it is, mathematics is the language, and other constituents, space, time, energy, and our matter constitutes our letters, words, and sentences, and probably the molecules like DNA. And you can also say that religion stopped reading when they made their own versions, and science has not done that yet. Science keep on reading the original version, and probably it will never make its own version, because the basic tenet is like every theory has to be verified by the experiment, and experiment result has to be, an experiment is directly reading from your outside world, right? So you cannot change that. So we will never have our own version of the book. Now prophets, right? So what prophets are doing, like some truth, something will be, so normally prophets get, they will have some revelations, and God directly reveals some truths to them, and they convey that to the other human beings. So now I'll just take the case of light, right? Light, it fascinated everybody, and you can see these lines from the Upanishad. And also you can see this Maxwell's equation. So I can say that this light is nothing but electromagnetic waves. It is a truth from nature, and it was revealed to Maxwell. And Maxwell did not make a separate religion for that, getting that, new truth or anything. But eventually, some kind of temples were built based on this truth. And you can see one here, this man is holding. And also you will find even the general theory of relativity is now, and all of you are having this in your pocket. So this is how probably when science finds, I mean, some truth gets revealed and it finds out the secrets of this universe or whatever, the external world. And finally, the proof of that comes in different ways, sometimes as technology, right? And now if we go for our creation stories, every religion has a story and we also have a story, but how our story is different. And here I would look at it this way. All other stories you are not supposed to question, and there is no need of explanation. But here, this story, you can give an explanation even to a high school student. So I'll just do 4 or 5 slides to do that. It starts like this. Okay, first experiment, that the size of Earth was calculated. A simple experiment. Another thing is like you can find out a distance. Suppose you want to get this distance to some planet. You can use this method, parallax method. You just stay here and measure this angle, and from here this angle. So from this distance and to angle, you can measure the distance, right? And once you have the distance to a nearby planet, and there is a way to measure the distance to sun, right? I'm not going into the details, but you can find all these things, details. It is how it has been done. And once you know the distance to sun, and after 6 months it will be here. I mean, traveling twice the distance, Earth will be in this position. So once you know this baseline, you can find the distance to a sun. That means with simple geometry and some experiment, you can find the distance to a star. And once that is known, you also know that every element has signatures, like a spectral line of helium, whether it is helium from sun or star or from your laboratory, some flask, it is the same spectrum, right? That signatures. But also we know about the Doppler shift. Like the sound Doppler shift every day we experience when you are standing in a bus stop or somewhere. But it's true for light also. Like if a star is moving away, spectral lines shift towards the red, lower frequency, and there is a blue shift. So that means it is so simple. That means if you take a star at some distance, you know how to calculate the distance to that, and you can also measure the velocity at which it is running away. The observed fact is that it is not coming towards us, it is running away. From this simple thing, you can find out when it has started from here, right? Of course, it's more involved calculation, but this is how this number comes. And so that means the creation story which science gives, you can give at least some explanation. And if you want more authentic, better explanation, you go to these links. This Hiroshi Murayama's site is, and there is some Coursera, there is a course on it. You can take that. It's a free course. And then coming about life, there is an important experiment that was conducted in 1952. That said, until then the chemistry was separate, organic and inorganic. And this experiment demonstrated that this ammonia, water vapor, and all these things, from that you can make amino acids. That means the basic building blocks of life. And based on these and many other observations, science finally came up with something like the life starts with the capability of molecules that can, duplicating a molecule. And nowadays, it's every day people are doing it. All this corona PCR test is nothing but you are making copies of billions of copies of the same molecule we are making. But another thing is, anything that can happen in a test tube in your lab, it can happen outside anywhere. Only thing is the probability is less. And finally, we see the language of life also has been decoded by science. So this is part of the theory of creation. And this that the Nobel Prize winning that model, something of invention in chemistry, but done by a physicist and a biologist, the double helix. And this also, which you are aware of that. And ultimately what it tells is, if you take at the molecular level, take human DNA and compare with others, like more than 90% DNA is common with chimps, and mouse 88%, for a cow 85%, and all these things. But even if you take grass, fine grain, plants, 25% of the DNA, human DNA, you find in a blade of grass also, right? So that is written in the book. So we can say, our holy book says, the blade of grass you step on while walking is your distant cousin. And also it tells atoms that is constituting that grass. Probably it belongs to somebody walked on it yesterday. So that recycling all those concepts. And I would say it is a kind of a better spirituality. It's something which try to make you a little bit humble. And another package is miracles, right? If you remember in the earlier slide I mentioned when the miracles, I have given a link. And that link is towards some news in the BBC. Like Mother Teresa got Nobel Prize for the social work, but to get sainthood, some miracle was required. So you can refer to that link, and the slides are on the website. So you can say you can consider these are small miracles, but probably a first-rate miracle is appearance of space, time, energy, and mass, and formation of atoms, molecules. Ultimately, all these complex assembly of molecules, developing consciousness, that is our brain, and searching for their own origin. Basically, even if whatever we are talking about, all these things, it is done by a complex array of molecules, right? So that itself is a big miracle. And finally, coming to this morals and ethics, this is where actually sometimes say, okay, science doesn't say anything about that, but you see this is a paper from Nature, and it says the empathy and consideration for other, beings, that is already wired into our brains. Most of the times we spoil it later on. And if you want to read more on this, there is a very good book by Dr. V.S. Ramchandran, The Telltale Brain. You can buy this from Amazon, or if you search this, an old version, a PDF also is available. And then there is work of Jack Panzer. This also, you can follow this link. It will tell you actually how the empathy and all those things are actually inherent in our DNA. It means collaboration as well as competition. It is not only just competition, but collaboration also built into our DNA. And this is something which I picked up from this book. Like it's very interesting. These are same pictures actually. Here you see as a projection, and that is this. So this is a dip here, and this is a projection. Actually, what happens is here he argues that this tells you many things about how you view things. This 3D image, 3D impression is created by your brain, and it also has an evolutionary reason, because your light, when our brain evolved, light has been always coming from top, not from bottom. That's why we see this as a projection and this as a dip, because it is only a plain thing. There is no projection here, but here it is more light, here it is less light. Similarly, here it is less light, more light. So, and brain immediately says, okay, there is a projection here. And if the more interesting thing is, if you keep your head somewhat, at 90 degree, tilt your head and look at this picture, you get, it's all, will be confusing. You will not find this. Anyway, it's just giving an interesting point to learn more about human brain. Now, we'll come to the next topic, efforts to undermine science. It's not an imagination, it happens. One thing is outright rejection, campaigns against vaccination, birth control, those. All over the world it happens. And certain things, opposition of like this flat earth theory is now almost flat, but the creationism is still active, especially in the United States. And here also, recently some noises are heard regarding that, like evolution is not correct, theory of evolution. And another method is misinterpret science to prove it wrong. Like say second law of thermodynamics says the entropy has to increase. That means science cannot explain the how life, because life is reducing entropy, but they silently omit the clause that it has to be a closed system, and life is not a closed system. Right? Then another argument is science does not know all. It is true. Science never claims that, but sometimes it is done by quoting science, especially quantum mechanics. Like that's an argument. Another thing is that has done many times is mixing science with ideologies to create a sort of fake science, and trivialize science by ancient science propaganda, and then sabotaging this by diverting it to irrelevant areas. And to do the last thing, you need the political power. So this is some news actually. I put this news just to show that how powerful are the other forces. Like it is like one rule was there in this world, part of the Obamacare, I think. The employers were supposed to give the medical support, and that includes the birth control, that medicine pills or whatever. But somebody went to this Trump administration stopped that, and the court said, okay, it can be stopped. So that shows that science can be the loser sometimes. And this is an old one. You can see that. This is just want to mention you the Scops monkey trial. It was in 1925. This was actually a court case where against a teacher that in some Tennessee, according to Tennessee law, you could not teach theory of evolution. But okay, nowadays all those things have changed a lot, but still there are forces. Now, another thing is like the argument, science doesn't know the ultimate, many things are vague. Like for example, they say science does not even know light or matter is wave or particle, and atom, and then the uncertainty in quantum mechanics, all those things. But all those things are at a different level. For example, quantum mechanics has predicted experimental results in the most accurate prediction in the history of science. And I'll not go into that details. I'll just take a practical example. For example, if you know there's a floating gate transistor, there you just, so how many electrons have to be trapped here, all those things are precisely calculated. And the proof of that, all these things are exact or, very reliably is, suppose a pen drive, USB pen drive, which you are a flash memory, which you are keeping in your pocket, has billions of such junctions, and all of them work as, as intended, and it's all making the predictions of quantum mechanics, and it shows that whatever we are talking about, the other aspects, it is at a different level and not something like a drawback of the theory or anything. This is again the mixing of political ideologies with science, and recently that tendency is coming to us also. This is from the Soviet era. There is Trofim. Lysenko came up with a theory that plants also can be changed by exposing them to right stimuli. And he got an undue advantage there, and because it was consistent with their political ideology. But the net result was he gaining a very upper hand, and finally resulted in a very low production and in a famine that killed millions. These are all references you can find out this. And a similar things has happened here also. Unscientific things have been promoted. It happens in an organized manner also. Sometimes you try to divide science into our science, their science, yesterday's science, tomorrow's science, today's science. Does it have any meaning? I do not know. Because these things that I have taken from this Government of India website, Vedic.co.in, science. It says actually gold, silver, mercury with certain herbs and sound basis in modern science, medicine too. It's a claim. And there are some papers elaborate, they're making all sorts of claims. But when you go to World Health Organization or other sites, and mercury is projected as a big health hazard. And mercury was used by modern medicine also, maybe 100 years back, and finally realized all the heavy metals are poisonous. But we still have the tendency to justify that, because when you try to see what should have been done is, yesterday's knowledge is something you have to build upon that and improve it. And just because of it belongs to some region or some community, you cannot say that is that's something which is unchangeable or anything, because that is not science ultimately. So that is actually a threat to science, I would say. And more explicit one, all of you have seen this news, and I have been working with like nuclear radiation as well as RF radiation or microwave radiation. But when you talk about the stopping power or the shielding of radiation, if it is microwave or RF, we use a metal shield because the conductivity matters. And in other cases, we may use material depending upon their atomic mass, like we use lead in some cases, and we use even paraffin wax in some other cases. But always it has been based on the atomic properties, right? And not just by the origin, whether it is where from the material is coming, not by vague claim. But here the claim is cow dung will protect everyone, it is anti-radiation. And science behind that, we don't know, but this is government funded. And it is generating some business opportunity. You go to Amazon, you can buy these chips now. And I do not know whether we are becoming scientific or not with these sort of developments. And this is another example from our neighbor. It is the Great Leap Forward 1958 to 62, what happened in China. Actually, what happened is one autocratic ruler thought he can make big changes in good faith, and they made actually the backyard furnaces. It's a very interesting story. And ultimately, around in 1975 only, they realized nothing of this will work and they went for bigger plants, and now they are much better off. And if you really want to see this, what happened during this, there are very good movies on that, which I have given the links here. And this to live, this gives all these things like what happened during that and how people lived and how they felt, everything. So if you really want to know about that, these links can be. Now about these claims, I'm not going to say, or I cannot say whether this is right or wrong. Suppose say somebody makes a statement, there we had nuclear weapons during Mahabharata, and I have seen so many WhatsApp University forwards, which is with videos and all. But how do you decide? Here, in one book, Professor Jen Narlikar gives one argument. Your only evidence is that book. So you read Mahabharata, and there are a lot of descriptions about palace and everything, and you find out whether is there any mention of any electric bulb. And you'll find all kinds of oil lamps, everything is described, and no electric bulb is mentioned. There is no electricity. Then you use your knowledge and common sense, whether you will have nuclear energy or power without having electricity. Because electricity is the one which should have probably easy to invent. Right? So this is how you judge all these sort of claims. You have to see, all I'm saying scientific method is you have to see the evidence, not just arguments. Another thing is like, it's a continuation. It is not like, I mean, my view is like, say, this question is from the Upanishads. Like, by knowing what, I will learn all these things, like that means it has, there is the question as a kind of a right understanding that you don't have to know many things. There is something which is key to all these diverse things. And that science also subscribe to that view. But suppose say the people who ask that questions, then you have Aryabhatta after that, many others, and then you have Kepler, Newton, Einstein. This it's a continuum, right? And you cannot jump here. This all, if you say this legacy go to Aryabhatta and Aryabhatta's legacy go to Kepler, then to Newton, and it goes. And we can always say, okay, we did something like when you come to technologies like this iron pillar in front of the minar, it's something we should say, okay, we had that technology at that time. The metallurgy we were good, that makes sense. But now, when you say, this is something only we had, and suppose we start harping on that and ignoring the future developments, it may not do, because there is nothing like a local science. It is like you cannot have a national science, because you cannot have a national multiplication table. See, there cannot be a multiplication table for US, Europe, or India separately, right? It's like same with science. And you can also ask a curious question. Suppose the rishis who asked this question, if they come back today, where they will go? My personal view is that they would probably go to CERN, because the kind of question they asked, they will find similar people around there, right? So all this division into space, time, and all these legacies, it looks really absurd. Then again, when you talk about this, because science always say, or the idea of progress is what science advocates. So when you talk about progress, you're talking that past was better. I already showed you some graphs and how past was there about how we human beings lived, all those things. But still you can ask the question, which world is better, ancient or modern? For example, Greeks claim an ancient democracy, but it was a democracy of 5% people, right? Slaves and women had no say in it. Same probably true with our ancient past also. Then here, if you carefully read through Mahabharata, that gives, see, all these epics gives a very clear picture of that social life at that time. And the question is whether we want to see, live in a society where the question like what Karna faced. Like suppose say I have this knowledge, I want to demonstrate, and if you ask, okay, what family you belongs or what caste you belong, we don't need, right? So first of all, the concepts like equality and liberty, they are new. And these things probably we should not look for their origin. And main thing, like we should not look it picks as a history. That may not be a scientific view. So finally, I come to that, the points to ponder, like both science, religion, everything started from philosophy and diverted into two different streams. And is science offers, or does it have a capability of a better religion? I do not know. Another thing I have noticed is all religions preach against individual ego, but survive. They somehow encourage the collective ego groups. And nationalism or other ideologies also have the same tendency of a religion. And a false pride of a group, a collective false pride of a group is a hallmark of both. But science actually, it punctures the false pride of the human race. It says there is a lot of things common between you and the virus and bacteria. We have recently seen that, right? The coronavirus is attacking you because they also have the same language, ATCG, they have the same DNA code they also follow. Otherwise, they wouldn't have affected us. So we are part of a bigger family. We don't have much of an importance, and in space and time, we are insignificant. These are the lessons which science gives. Now, finally, if you take this from this Upanishads, this verse, now you can ask the question: the legacy of these lines belongs to whom? In my view, only science tried to do these three things. From truth to, I would not say falsehood, from a lower level of truth to higher level, better and better truth, and darkness to light, and even death to immortality. So only science is practicing these things, and it doesn't respect the narrow boundaries created by human. So as students of science, probably we should look into this message of science, join it and strengthen it, not just for the sake of technology, but for a better society as well. These are some of the books. I have already given some references, and this is a very interesting book which by Schrodinger. It's a biology book by Schrodinger. He makes some arguments based on thermodynamics, and he's actually, this book, importance of this book is it has been quoted by many 4 or 5 Nobel laureates, including this James Watson. So this is the book which prompted us to look for that molecule, because Schrodinger predicted that if everything is coded in such a small volume, it has to be a molecule. That's how we searched for the DNA, or that molecule started. First, they thought it was proteins, but finally ended up in DNA. And the word scientific temper, which is really lacking probably nowadays, has been coined by Nehru. And he makes this statement: the future belongs to science and those who make friends with science. And so finally, I am coming to my last slide. Here, probably I put this: even those who practice science or make a living out of science, many of us are a little bit, even our scientists are sometimes shaky about many things, because I have been interacting with teachers and scientists, and I have seen physics teachers who teach the graphite, carbon, and diamond are same allotropic forms of the same element, and the same time having a diamond ring with some color and thinking that it will bring some luck. Or sometimes we believe in auspicious moments and law of conservation of energy simultaneously, even though conservation of energy is derived mathematically from the homogeneity of time. So these conflicts normally happens to us, even like we sometimes, those who practice science also do not have a full faith in that. So I conclude with this. This was only an attempt to just introduce some material to you, and it's up to you to actually read more about it. So this here I have given the links, and Thank you for your attention, and if there are any questions, we can take.
Thank you, Dr. Ajit. Fascinating journey through early history of humankind, with the discovery of how human progress triggered off with the discovery of fire, and then agriculture, and then going on to understanding galaxies and stars, and even addressing issues, present day issues like pseudoscience, or the so-called mixing of science with superstitions, and where do we stand in terms of science. And you made a very big statement about, what is religion and what is the book, holy book, and how to read that book, and where does science stand in terms of space and time. And fascinating, really fascinating journey, and why scientists or science seeking students should look elsewhere for motivation than just the universe. Great talk, thank you very much. And the session is open to discussions. Of course, there are so many subjective matters, as well as although the focus was being objective, believing. So the session is open to discussions. Questions? Sir, maybe you can exit your screen, maybe. Yeah. Okay, so maybe I can start off saying, so science as such, we understand it's actually a progression of accumulation of knowledge, which means that the theories are discarded, new theories are born, and it is a progression. And do you think that science will lead to the ultimate all encompassing truth in some future time?
If at all we reach there, it would be only through science. We may or may not, but first of all, the point is, science doesn't care about our personal wishes or whatever we want. It is just basically telling the truth on your face. And if you look from that angle, if at all we learn everything, we know about life, or that is the most interesting phenomena. And science, okay, it's very close to that, right? So, and what I would say is, if at all we reach there, it will be only through science. And we are probably asymptotically, we are reaching there. That's what I...
Science is the only area where it doesn't feel humiliated to discard a theory, and doesn't have to hold on or show off a face, so that the theory that was developed by Isaac Newton has to be thrown off when quantum mechanics come in. But then they all have their own place in the history of the development of science.
It is always prone to revision, and it is open to revision all the time. All other ideologies are not open to revision.
Yeah, that is the conflict that happens when people try to say that each country has their own traditional science, and those science are kind of canonical. It cannot be changed.
Then it's not science, actually.
Then that is not science. That is superstitions. Okay, this is a fascinating field. I hope there are at least some curious people around to ask a few questions to somebody who has read through the whole history of these different sciences. The human development, human growth, biology and physics, and astrophysics.
Ajit sir, it's a wonderful talk, and in fact, thought-provoking one. So, when we are talking about science and belief, let me tell you one example. For example, uncertainty principle itself in quantum mechanics. So, when people, for example, when you talk about beta decay, you generally say electrons cannot sit inside the nucleus, but beta decay is actually originating from the nucleus within the time allowed by the uncertainty relation delta E delta T. So, use the quantum mechanics says that there is a time which is allowed by the uncertainty relation within which any nasty thing can happen, and that can give certain space for those kind of interpretations, like which is related to beliefs and religions, isn't it? How do we?
Okay, see, quantum mechanics that way gives a lot of scope for many interpretations, but it's mostly there is no confusion about the mathematical models and its predictions. The confusion is always how to interpret the whole thing in your language. See, when we talk about time and space, we cannot think in microseconds. We cannot think velocities which is approaching the close to velocity of light. So we are sitting with a common sense that is developed in centimeters and seconds. And you see, so all our the words, actually, if you want to get more into that, there is a book by Physics and Philosophy by Heisenberg. So he says the main problem is using the words from our daily usage, like even velocity or those things. When you take it there into this quantum mechanics thing, they lose their meaning. So that gives rise to some confusion also. And like the time what we normally have, the feeling which our brain has, I mean, over the years of evolution. And probably that is not what Einstein means, when he says time, isn't it? I mean, that's the vague understanding I have. I am not an authority in that. Because we are trying to put these daily life words into that, and we want an explanation which satisfies our common sense, and that has been developed in this in a different time and space scale, and there things don't probably fit in. So even now, suppose say like some particles like in cosmic rays, some of them, some muons which are not supposed to reach Earth's surface, they reach here, and that is explained because there's velocity, their lifetime has been increased. So these things, if we try to interpret in our normal language, I do not know whether we so that then it leads to all sorts of mysteries probably, right? I do not know. Like maybe somebody else can comment on that.
Yeah.
Hello, Dr. Ajit. I am Vincent from Physics Department. So long time back we had also a discussion. I think I remember your presence in our university. Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah.
Maybe you can switch on your videos.
Yeah, it was a very wonderful talk. And while passing through your discussions, I do have a doubt whether as important as inspiring students about the scientific methods is also important, like not only giving students the knowledge or vision of science, cultivating the scientific method of inquiry. That is lacking in today's curriculum. I think that may be very more important in the coming years. What is your opinion?
Let's see, if you don't have any faith in science, then it is a dangerous thing actually, right?
Yes.
Most of the time it's just those who are learning science just see as okay, something which can help them in technology or help them to get a job. But there is something slightly beyond that. I mean, learning science in itself is a kind of fascinating experience, and that message has to go. And what I feel is one thing, practical thing, what I normally many times I have advocated also is the college libraries should have books without mathematics, like you have the Cosmos and many other books, which qualitatively tells about that Schrodinger's cat. There is Griffin's one book, which explains, it follows the history of some list I have also given in the website, actually, a set of books. Similarly, in biology, Selfish Gene and the book called DNA. So these sort of books should be there in the department library, in addition to our textbooks, which they have to learn for writing the exam. Because many things, see, whatever we may convey, a book written by the experts like Carl Sagan or other people, that has a much better impact, and probably we should try to expose the students to those things, and because they are more authentic also. When I say it cannot be considered as something authentic, but when Carl Sagan or Feynman or somebody say, or Einstein, that's why I just gave the reference of that book. It is more authentic because they have put more effort and that kind of capabilities. So we have to directly, we should try to expose, at least, probably I would say it's a must to expose the writings of Einstein, because he has things, written in a very much more clear manner, almost encompassing all the areas. Because for him, society also was a major concern, like science.
So actually, sir, I was just going to be a little deviate from your just what you said, because science is all about not respecting all the hierarchies. Even we can deny Einstein, even we can deny Carl Sagan. So the difference is actually that science only seeks the truth, so that it is not propagandist. So you can question what the methodology that was adopted by a previous scientist just because he's famous. It doesn't matter. So I think the scientific methodology which Vincent was telling about is primarily important, because that is the way of questioning and doubting and asking, everything that has actually been established. So it is kind of a revolutionary thing rather than something conforming.
No. What I meant was something like these people have written extensively on the philosophy of science. That's what I meant, not the scientific truth.
Right.
They say they have told what is really science and how it, is connected with human lives and all those issues. That's what I really meant.
Yeah. So they take you through the journey. They introduce you to the field. At the same time, it is. I think when it comes to science, I think what the science gives to a learner, a student, or a graduate is the confidence that you don't have to rely on anything else except your brain and your understanding. If you know how to interpret it, how to understand it, it is your your knowledge, and from there you can build on it logically.
Yeah.
The logic,
so long as it is consistent with the experimental result. That's the holy book. Reading the holy book is most important. That's the last word.
What is most important is the logic and the scientific. The word scientific almost equals to say the truthful, like the right path, the right way to deal with the problem.
That sometimes say when we translate in Malayalam, Shastram, I say that's the wrong word. We have to put Satyanveshana for science. That's the more apt word.
It's seeking truth. Okay. Any other comments? Or probably you may have an idea which came up in your mind. Please share.
Good afternoon, sir. I have one doubt.
Okay, Varun. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Sir, in one of your slides, there was a sentence like religion is preaching against the individual ego, something like that. So, don't you think that there will be some purpose to go beyond the ego to know what lies there?
Yeah, that's what I told. All religions are talking about against individual ego, but they survive on the collective ego. Okay, if you belong to our group, see, even the humans, all religions put humans one cut above other animals, right? You read any book. So that means the collective human ego is promoted, but science doesn't do that. That was the point. Not that it was wrong. It is mentioned that individual ego is bad, but at the same time it kind of promotes the collective ego of the human race, human beings, and put them above the animals. Okay, and even if you look from the environmental issue point of view, that is not really wrong. We are one among the animals, right? That's the point of view which science promotes. I told you finally, suppose you take even the grass is your distant cousin, that is the message science gives. But religion says, okay, humans are on a top pedestal somewhere, and all others are below, right?
I don't think so, sir, because religion says that everything is one. Like in Advaita, they say there is no duality. Everything is one in real. So how can you say religion is actually putting the others down? And
You see that you were to read many texts because Advaita says that, but there are so many stories. Because our time will go like Narada's one story is there actually. It all says actually one life. You become a lover, suppose you become some animal, and finally your ultimate birth is human being.
yes, sir. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So what does it mean?
No, it doesn't degrade the others. So means
No. You say you go through this, and this is the ultimate. So there is something in it. Try to read about it more. Yeah. It gives a special status to human beings.
sir, because there is a special status, right? Because like actually for other animals, their only aim is to survive, eat, and reproduce. But we are actually looking for something else for pleasure. We are not satisfied with simply surviving.
This is what I'm telling. Say, if you take a bird, a kite, or it has the ability to fly and it has a better vision. See, humans, the evolution invested in a big brain for humans, right? And other than that, if you look at many other animals, they have invested in the body. So they have many other capabilities, but we invested in a brain. I mean, nature, by chance,
Yes.
Human race invested in the brain. And we think that we have something, more ultimate aim than eating and, surviving and reproducing. But if you think a little bit deeper, you'll find that it's a bit hollow. It's not really there. And in some aspects, if you look at human beings are much worse because no other animals has made 2 world wars, right? And no other animals are prone to nationalism. They don't fight each other. They have small boundaries or other things just for the sake of food. Humans are the only animals kill other humans. I mean, no other animals kills their own species, and they kill only for food. So there are certain things, if you look at it, that's quite wrong with human beings. And one has to understand and correct it, right? And scientific view says that. And it is not going to boost our ego. And not only that, even if you compare life and non-life, we always say life is sacred, precious, because we are living beings. But in the universe, life is only as minute, 1/1000th of a universe is probably having life, as we know, right?
Yes.
And another thing, imagine a situation, suppose a stone has ability to think. It may think like this, see, I am here and I will gradually decay, I don't do any harm to anybody. But look at that living being. It is like if I borrow the words of Bertrand Russell, it is always trying to postpone its decomposition and try to enhance the decomposition of other beings like him. And that is what the definition of life, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So there is, I'm not saying we should kill all human beings or anything, but we should not be we should not have a superiority feeling there, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Varun.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Any other comments?
Sir, I am an undergraduate student.
Let's confine to science more than philosophy, maybe a little bit more. The philosophical implications. Okay. Adityan?
I am an undergraduate student in physics. My doubt is whether today's physics is almost complete.
Oh no. Never. Why do you say that, first of all? Why do you say that?
When I read the history of science, there were many discoveries in the past also. In the 19th century itself, there was many discoveries in few decades. I don't see any discoveries happening.
Okay, so if you are looking for a research problem, so I'll just say something with my limited experience, and I think Professor Warrior also is there. I'll just talk about the topic which I learned under his guidance. That is nuclear fission. So we know that we understand the nucleus a lot, right? Because we have made nuclear reactors and nuclear energy, everything. But you should know that there is no theory as of today that explains all the observed phenomena like fission or whatever radioactive decay, all those things, lifetimes, everything. There is no theory till date, because for atomic, everything is there. Even the nuclear interaction, the nature of them is not precisely, mathematically it is not being formulated. So there are a lot of things to be learned. So it is not going to end, but somehow, if you see physics last maybe 70, 80 years, no major breakthrough in theory after 1930 probably. Because the first 30 years that Gamow says that 30 years that shook physics, a lot of things happened. But after that, but a lot of things happened in biology. So it's not that everything is over. There are many things. Maybe somebody like Einstein or someone has to come and to take us into a broader territory. So that's what I mean. Nothing is over. That I can assure you.
Okay, as time is running out. Maybe with any other short question, then we would like to wind up. If not, it has been a great talk, great day to our webinar series, which is starting this today. And thanks very much to Dr. Ajit Kumar for such a fascinating journey of development of science and its implications and the future of science, and answering some of the questions of the students and us. Thank you very much. I will now end the session and hand over, if you want to say a word or something, maybe, and then there's some formal